Hey, I'm Ryan, and I'm here to prove why it's impossible for guys and girls to just be friends. Yeah, I know it's the 21st century and all, but I only reached this conclusion through experience. My ex Carrie was friends with this super annoying guy called Chris. They'd known each other for years, but it was obvious he liked her. I saw how gooey eyed he was around her. She was so insistent that there was nothing going on between them, but guess what? After we broke up, it didn't take long for them to go official on social media. After that, I started dating this awesome girl called Lily. I didn't even mind the fact that there were a few guys in her group, as I eventually befriended them all too. They're all nice, and especially this one guy, Todd, seems like a cool dude. We played basketball together and chatted about video games. Lily didn't like me talking to him, though. She said she found it weird that I was so friendly with him, and she'd rather I wasn't. Whatever, I just put this down to the fact that girls could be weird sometimes. Okay, so maybe Lily didn't seem to like Todd all that much. She never sat by him or really spoke to him. It was probably just some ridiculous girl drama thing. So I continued to chat with Todd as normal. He was a genuine guy who did nice things. Such as when Lily got super drunk at some party, he was the one who called me up to come and get her. And then he stayed up with her until I arrived. I actually kind of felt sorry for Todd, as the rest of the group all had partners, so he was left being the gooseberry. Once, when me and Lily were feeding each other strawberries and being all lovey-dovey, I noticed how glum he looked. Suddenly, an idea popped into my head. I should help him find a girlfriend. So I have this one friend called Gemma. She's sweet and pretty, but she can be a little on the overbearing side. She's always sneaking candy bars in my backpack with sticky notes on them saying, "Enjoy, love, G, X." And she likes every single picture I post on social media pages. I've told her I'm not interested in her like that, as I'm with Lily, but she always just smiles and says, "I know that's silly." Anyway, Todd struck me as the kind of guy who may like a candy-giving, slightly clingy girl. So on a group outing to the cinema, I told him how I felt bad for him being the only single one in the group, and how I had this friend who'd be perfect for him. At first, he shook his head and said thanks but no thanks, as he wasn't looking for a girlfriend right now. I wasn't taking no for an answer. So the next week I bombarded him with messages all about how amazing Gemma was. In the end, he agreed to go on a date with her. And afterwards, he messaged me, thanking me for setting it up, and telling me how he'd had a great time. Result? Just call me Dr. Love, please. Oh, you're welcome. My relationship with Lily was going great. So when she said she was going away for the night with her friends, I told her this was cool, as I trusted her and I trusted them. Then at 3 a.m., when I was shooting zombies on my game, my phone buzzed. It was Todd. "We've been playing Truth or Dare. Sorry, but I think you need to hear this." This was followed by a voice message. My heart sank, as in a tipsy voice I heard Lily say, "Before loving Ryan, I actually had feelings for another guy, and I kinda still do now, The recording ended there. Not that it mattered, as I'd heard enough. My girlfriend liked someone else. Then Todd messaged me. "Sorry for that, bro. Thought you deserved the heads up." I thanked him for his honesty. I knew it must have been hard for him to call out Lily. As I saw it, he was a really good guy with the right intentions. For obvious reasons that night, I couldn't sleep at all. So the next morning, I got up early and went for a jog to try and clear my mind fog. That's when Gemma rang me up and asked me out on a picnic. I agreed. I figured that it'd beat moping around all miserable. By the time I arrived back from my jog, Gemma was already parked outside of my dorm, a smile on her face and a picnic basket in hand. I commented on how quick she'd packed it, and she blushed and mentioned something about female intuition. I stank, so I went and showered quickly. Then, as I was getting into Gemma's car, Lily messaged me, telling me she'd be back by noon and I should come over for lunch. But I'm not in any mood to deal with her just yet. So I messaged her saying I was busy with an assignment. The picnic was great. It was such a sunny day, and Gemma filled the basket with all of my favorite treats. I arrived back feeling positive about things. So what if Lily had a crush on another guy? It didn't mean she didn't love me, right? So I went over to Lily's place, but when she opened the door, she just scowled at me and said, "Oh, it's you." Of course it was me. Who else would it be? I followed her inside, but her mood only worsened. I tried asking her about her trip, but she answered with shrugs and eye rolls. Feeling annoyed, I asked her what her problem was. Then she just went into full rage mode and shouted at me. What's my problem? Why don't we talk about you? Where have you been today? Don't think you can lie to me. Then she showed me on her phone, and on the screen was one of Gemma's posts about how she'd had a lovely picnic with me. We're just friends, Lily, you know that. You spent all night with your guy friends, and I didn't moan about it. Well, I know she likes you, and now you're just hanging out with her behind my back. Fueled by anger, I yelled at her. So what? You're not really innocent either. I know you prefer some other guy over me. Well, then I suggest you go and date him instead. What? Whatever. You know what? Fine. Maybe I will. Yeah, well, I think you should. I stormed out of there and charged up the street. By the time I arrived back at my dorm, the reality dawned on me that I'd just broken up with the love of my life. Jeez, this sucked. From then on, whenever I saw Lily around campus, she totally ignored me. It was the worst feeling ever. Todd messaged me a lot to check if I was okay. I kind of hoped he could help me get back with Lily, but I was getting some seriously weird vibes from him. Once he even sent a message saying, "You're an amazing guy, and you're way too good for Lily anyway." Okay, weird. Did he have a crush on me? That would explain why Lily was wary of me making friends with him. Worse still, I had Gemma hanging around me like some sort of limpet. Because I was lonely, I agreed to go for a coffee with her. She left her phone on the table when she went to the toilet. It beeped, so I looked at it. And that's when I saw that Todd had a picture of him holding Lily in her arms with the caption, "Hey, look, I've succeeded. You two quickly finish your quest, although maybe we should pass on the double date." As Gemma walked back over, I waved the picture in front of her and said, "I think you have some explaining to do." The color drained from her face, but she gave me a feeble nod. It turns out that on her date with Todd, they discussed how she was crazy about me and how he was into Lily. Then Todd had shown Gemma the messages I'd sent him, telling him how great she was and why I thought he should date her. So he made out I must secretly like her and suggested they come up with a plan to split us up. There I was thinking Todd was my friend, but turns out the whole time he was an evil genius. Crying, Gemma played me the full voice message that Todd had sent her from that night. Before loving Ryan, I actually had feelings for another guy. And I still kinda do now, but it doesn't matter, as I've decided that Ryan's the guy for me. Besides, some of you have probably noticed that the other guy, well, it's Todd. We're just friends though, so let's leave it be. I told Gemma to stay away from me. Then I stormed out of there. She shouted after me, but I ignored her, and I've been ignoring her ever since. So there we go. In the end, opposite-sex friendships never bring any good. I wanted to believe that guys and girls could just be friends, but clearly they can't. I've given this a lot of thought, and decided to tell Lily everything, as she deserves to know what a cruel and conniving guy Todd is. I don't know how she'll react, but I know I have to let her know, right? I hope she gives me another chance, but it might be too late. Todd tore us apart with his mind games, and I stood by and let him. Geez, I miss her. Wish me luck.
Hi, I'm Diane, and I'm 20 years old. I fell in love on the first day of college. I'm not even joking. I'd promised my mom I'd focus on my studies and wouldn't fall for any boys. But one look at Brett, and I broke that promise immediately. We had an instant connection, and pretty soon we were spending every waking moment together. I can't help but think that if I hadn't met him, maybe I'd never have found out the dark secret my mom and aunt had been hiding from me my whole life. You see, my mom raised me alone, and I had no idea who my dad was. Let's just say it seemed like my mom got around, so she really didn't want me to get into the same kind of situation as her. I decided to keep Brett a secret. She didn't need to know, right? When I went home for Christmas vacation, I missed Brett so much, but I couldn't let my mom know about him. So I'd wait until she went to bed before calling him. One night, she caught me, though. She must have gone to the bathroom, and suddenly I heard footsteps. She was standing right there. I didn't know how much she heard, but I was so embarrassed. I thought she'd grab the phone from me and tell me off, but instead, she just walked back to bed. It was so weird. In the morning, she was sitting at the kitchen table grinning and said, "Well, who is he then? Invite him over. Don't be shy." I couldn't believe it. I thought she'd freak out, but instead she wanted to meet him. She suggested we invited him over for dinner, as my aunt was also coming over that night. My mom and my aunt were like best friends and had basically raised me together, so I was excited for her to meet Brett too. He took the bus that afternoon, as he was desperate to see me, and my mom said he could stay in the spare room. As soon as my mom saw Brett, she grinned at me and whispered how handsome he was. Then we sat down to dinner and started chatting. My mom had so many questions for him, and it was a bit awkward. She wouldn't shut up, and it made her seem so nosy. She asked where he'd grown up, and what his mom and dad did, and even asked for their names and stuff. Meanwhile, my aunt just sat there quietly, and then at one point she got up from the table and went out into the garden. My mom ran after her, and Brett looked at me worried. I had no idea what was wrong. 10 minutes later, my mom came in and her expression had totally changed. She went from being warm and friendly to totally strict and cold. She looked at both Brett and I and said she decided I was far too young to have a boyfriend staying over, and then asked Brett to leave. I couldn't believe it. I mean, I was 20 years old. She was being so rude. So I said to her, "Mom, why? Please, can he just stay?" I was almost begging her, but she looked so serious and firm, and I knew she wasn't going to change her mind. Brett was even more shocked than me. I mean, it had been my mom who'd invited him in the first place, and now there she was, shooing him away. He quickly grabbed his stuff and ordered a taxi. I was so upset I didn't even say bye to him. I just burst into tears and felt so angry at my mom. Right after Brett left, I ran upstairs and locked myself in my room, and my mom stood on the other side begging to speak to me. She said there was something she needed to tell me. I refused to come out and instead sat on the floor on the other side of the door. I could hear my mom crying and knew this was serious. She said the reason she didn't want Brett to stay was because he was actually my half-brother. No, I didn't understand. I asked if my dad was also Brett's dad, and then I got angry. I thought my mom hadn't known who my dad was. I opened the door and I was about to start shouting at her when she told me what was really going on. I'd been adopted. Well, actually, I'd been kidnapped by my aunt when I was born. It's a long, shocking story, but basically my biological parents were this rich couple, but they were struggling to get pregnant. My biological mom had a best friend called Ashley, who she told everything to, but Ashley secretly had a crush on my dad. She seduced my dad until one night they slept together, and Ashley ended up getting pregnant. My dad was so happy and promised Ashley he'd help raise the baby, but that he couldn't divorce my mom. This made Ashley angry. She wanted my dad all to herself and wanted their kid to become the heir to his company. At the same time, my biological mom fell pregnant with me, and when my dad found out, he quickly forgot about Ashley and tried to forget about the mistake he'd made that one night. This, of course, made Ashley even more angry, but she still pretended to be friends with my mom. When my mom went into labor with me, my dad was away on a business trip, and Ashley paid someone to sneak into the hospital and kidnap me. That person turned out to be my aunt. She did it because she was desperate for cash, so she snuck in, dressed up as a nurse, and in the middle of the night stole me away. But she wasn't cold-blooded enough to just throw me away or leave me at an orphanage. So she took me to her sister's place and told her that she'd found me abandoned on the street. Her sister, who had never wanted to get married but had always wanted to be a mom, was so happy and decided to raise me. But then a few days later, it was all over the news, a missing baby. There was an exact description of what I'd been wearing, and even a photo of me just after I'd been born. There was no denying that I was the missing baby. My new mom confronted my aunt about it and found out the truth. My aunt said there was no way they could return me as my aunt had already spent all the money she'd been paid to cover some debts. And she didn't want to go to prison, so they decided to raise me as if I really was their own. That secret would still have been hidden from me if I hadn't brought Brett home. My mom was so shocked that I'd brought my dad and Ashley's son into her home and introduced him to her as my boyfriend. As my mom told me all of this, I just sat there frozen. This was absolutely unbelievable. I felt sick. They'd lied to me all these years, and even worse, my boyfriend was actually my half-brother. My whole life was one big mess. "I hate you, Mom, and I hate you too," I said to my aunt. "You helped that evil monster Ashley get what she wanted, and now you've ruined my life and taken away my family." My mom reached out to hug me, but I didn't want her near me. We both just sat there crying. She tried to calm me down and get me to relax. Then she sighed and said, "I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry. Your whole life I've been trying to make it up to you. I thought my love for you would be enough. As for Ashley, well, I heard she didn't get what she wanted in the end." Wait, why? I don't understand. But she successfully kidnapped me, right? I wiped my tears and looked at her. Yes, sweetie, but her main goal was to become your dad's wife. But that obviously didn't happen. Then she continued. After my aunt had kidnapped me, Ashley had given birth to Brett and was so happy thinking that my parents no longer had a baby and that my dad would now leave my mom and go live with her. But that's not what happened. Yes, their dear daughter was taken away, but my dad still stayed with my mom and loved her even more. My dad didn't get together with Ashley, but apparently my dad had still been helping raise Brett until now. There's definitely no bad blood between them because I've heard Brett talk about his dad quite a lot. Now there was only one thing for it. I had to find my biological parents and find out the rest of the story. They deserved to know I was alive. But now, what would I do about Brett? I'd have to break up with him somehow.
Hey, it's Jessica. From the outside, my life seemed perfect. My family is wealthy, I'm beautiful, shining bright, and even my job is fancy. But from the inside, I do have a character flaw. It's my short temper that almost caused me to lose everything. I've always been Daddy's little princess, which means that anything I want, I have to get, such as new clothes, a new car, and exotic vacations. Because of this, other girls have always been jealous of me. But Kath was different. She realized there's so much more to me than my designer outfits and glossy hair. Kathy's family lived nearby. You see, my dad was friends with Kath's father, who passed away when she was little. But being the nice guy my dad is, he continued to support them. He paid for Kath's education, so we went to the same school. She was the only friend who could handle my short temper. I know, that wasn't nice, but it was hard dealing with the average girl's jealousy toward me. As a result, there were a few incidents. One time, when I was just a primary student, some girl dared to put on my shirt after sports. She said it was an accident, but as if. I yelled at her that she'd stretched it, and now she owed me a new one. Kath tried to defuse the situation, but she just got caught up in the middle of the shouting match. Literally, as me and this girl were screaming insults at each other across Kath. Then another time, some kids sat in my seat in the canteen, and when I asked them to move, they refused to. I was fuming, so I poured my custard all over them. Seeing as the kids were about to get crazy, Kath passed them a napkin, hurriedly apologized to them, then led me out of there before I covered them in more of my lunch. She understood how mad I got on things, but never got annoyed at me about it. This is why our friendship continued into adulthood. It was perfect to have a friend like Kath to grow up with, but what made my life even more perfect was the arrival of our boy next door. Yes! A new family had just moved in, and my mom told me that a cute boy my age was going around meeting people. I ran out to suss it out and find Kath standing on her front porch and talking to a super cute guy. I swished out my hair and tottered over to them. "Hi, Kath." I smiled at her. Then I turned to him and said, "Hi there. We definitely haven't met before, 'cause there's no way I'd forget you." He smiled back and introduced himself as Andrew and said he lived on that block. I sat down on the couch in Kath's house and did my research on Andrew and found out he was a pretty famous influencer. His dad ran off with another woman and started a new family, so Andrew lives with his mom and Nan. And best of all, he was single. I pulled on Kath's arm and insisted that she help me beg Andrew as my man. She looked a little awkward at first, but then she reluctantly agreed to help. I persuaded Kath to pretend that she lost her phone, then I went round to Andrew's and begged him to come and help us look for it. He spent the whole afternoon trying to help us look for it, only to hear it buzzing in my pocket. Oops. Then one time, well, this wasn't planned, but I managed to get one of my new heels stuck in a drain cover. I was standing there yelling at it when Andrew walked past and told me to take my shoe off. I refused. Did he have any idea how expensive they were? He just laughed and told me to lean on him while he carefully unwedged my shoe. Whose heart wouldn't melt for this gentle guy? After that, we started to talk more, and then chatted every day. He had a sense of humor and was very gentle toward me. It is so wonderful to know that he was impressed by how cute I was, hiding Kat's phone in my pocket to find a chance to make friends. How embarrassing, but seemed like he liked that. After 2 months, he asked me out on a date, and soon we became an official couple. I loved being around his family, as his mom and grandma were so sweet and friendly. Then my dad said he needed me to go on a 3-month business trip in San Diego. I didn't want to leave Andrew for so long, but there was nothing I could do about it. Ugh, being an adult sucked sometimes. I just had to pack up and take a flight to San Diego, then finish the job as quickly as possible. Little did I know how terrible things could happen in the next 3 months. One night, my mom called me up. She was furious, and at first, I couldn't work out what she was saying. Finally, she calmed down enough for me to make her words out. Jess, I found the DNA test hidden away in one of your father's filing cabinets. Kath is his biological daughter. This whole time, he's been lying to us. I cannot put up with this. I'm divorcing him, and I won't be happy until he's left with nothing. What? Kath was my sister? No, it couldn't be. I called up Kath to get to the bottom of this. As soon as she picked up, I screamed at her. Your dad's my dad. How could you keep this a secret? You're trash, and so's your mom. You're both vile, ugly gold diggers, and I hate you both. Kath spluttered out. What? Huh? I don't understand. You heard me. You're trash, and so's your mom. She's nothing more than a man-eating, money-obsessed liar, and I hate her. Sobbing, Kath replied, Don't talk about my mom like that. This only made me angrier, so I yelled, I will say what I want to. I hate you and I hate her. I hope you both fall down a pothole and never get out. Suddenly, I heard a voice say in the background, Who are you talking to? And why are you so upset? I knew that voice. It was Andrew's. Why was he with Kath? I was about to scream out at her to stay away from my man, but she hung up. I immediately tried calling Andrew, but he didn't answer. I was so angry I screamed out, then went into the kitchen and started smashing glasses onto the floor and swiping things out of the cupboards. The next day, Andrew called me. I thought he was going to try and worm his way out of what he did, so I answered with a, Oh, hi, Andrew. It's nice to finally hear from you. He replied, Hi, Jess. Look, I have something important to tell you. It's my grandma. She's in the hospital, and I can't afford the medical bills. I hate asking, but please, could I borrow some money? Furious, I yelled, Who do you think you are? You did the dirty behind my back, and now you have the cheek to ask for my help? It's none of my business, dude. He fell silent, then hung up. At first, I was fuming. How dare he do that to me? But once I had time to calm down, I thought maybe I had overreacted a tiny bit. I mean, I could have given him a chance to explain, so I tried calling him again, but he didn't answer. I called Kath, and in my calmest voice, I asked her to tell me what was going on. She said she had no idea that my dad was also her real dad, and it was a lot for her to process. Then she said that she was only around at Andrew's last night because his grandma had a fever, and she was trying to help. But then her fever worsened, so she was taken to the hospital. I felt pretty bad about it all, so I tried calling Andrew again to sort all this mess out. But he'd blocked my number. I transferred him some money over towards his grandma's expenses, but he sent it straight back to me. It was so hard being so far away from Andrew and not being able to go and talk things through with him. I missed him like crazy. Because of this, I confided in Kath loads, and she kept me in the loop about how Andrew's grandma was. Apparently, she wasn't well at all. Then, one day, she came up with an idea to help. She told me to send money to her account, and she'd give it to Andrew, and tell him it was from her. Then, when his grandma was better, she'd tell Andrew the truth about where the money came from, and he was sure to realize how much I cared for him and forgive me. I thought this was a great idea, so I sent Kath the money. Then things got weird. She went super quiet and then stopped talking to me altogether. Then 2 months later, through social media, I found out that Andrew was getting married to Kath. What? After having a screaming frenzy, I calmed down enough to book a flight home. I took an Uber to Andrew's house and pounded on his door. He answered, and on seeing me, he slammed the door in my face. I wasn't leaving until he spoke to me, so I sat on his doorstep. It was only when it started to rain that he eventually opened the door, and in a gruff tone said, "Okay, you have 2 minutes. Then I want you off my property for good." Look, I know you're mad, and I'm sorry, but why are you ignoring me? I tried to make amends for what I did. I sent you the money. I know. I sent it straight back, remember? He grunted. Not that money. The money that Kath gave to you and said was from me. What? That money was from her, not you. You're jealous. You found out I was marrying her, and you're here to ruin our lives. No, I'm not. Please, it was me. I wanted to help. I pleaded, but he tutted, then slammed the door again. I stood there, a soggy mess, and his words sunk in. Kath had lied to Andrew about the money. Why would she do that? Furious, I stormed around to her house and was about to press the buzzer down until she answered when the door opened, and I saw Kath stepping out with Andrew's mom. I jumped out of sight and listened. Andrew's mom was thanking her for all her help and saying how much she couldn't wait for her to be her daughter-in-law. What? As soon as his mom walked off, I jumped out of hiding and confronted Kath. You're a liar! Kath was surprised seeing me, but then she just shrugged and said, whatever, then walked toward her door. He's my man now, not yours, she added, looking back at me. You traitor! I screamed at her as I charged towards her. We got into a fight, and there was a lot of hair pulling. Finally, Kath managed to get through her entrance door and lock me out. She grinned at me through the window, so I shouted at her, Kath, you just wait! You won't get away with this! A few days passed, and their wedding day arrived. It was in some super swanky golf resort. I tried sneaking in through the entrance, but 2 guards stopped me. Ugh! Kath must have pre-warned them about me. So I had to find another way in, which involved climbing through a tiny gap in the hedge. A bodycon dress wasn't my best choice, and I had twigs in my hair and grass stains all over me. Still, out of breath, I showed up at the aisle and waved the evidence of bank statements and messages between me and Kath in Andrew's face, and shouted, Look! This is all the proof you need to show that I sent the money to Kath to help your grandma, and she's a filthy liar! Andrew looked shocked, but he took the evidence from me. No, she's making it up! Kath's eyes widened in alarm as she tried to grab the evidence out of Andrew's hands. Seeing her reaction, he pulled it away from her and looked through it, his face falling when he discovered the truth. How could you lie to me about this? He stared at her. You told me that Jess cut all contact with you. Teary-eyed, Kath glared at me and said, You get everything! The nice clothes and the lavish lifestyle, yet you act like a spoiled brat. I was sick of hiding in your shadow and defending you for all your childish outbursts. I liked Andrew from the beginning, but no, you had to have him. Through gritted teeth, Andrew told her, It's over, Kath. I never want to see you ever again. After that, she rushed up the aisle in a frenzy of white fabric and sobs. Geez, talk about making an exit. That was 3 months ago, and a lot has changed since then. My dad eventually managed to persuade Mum to forgive him. although he had to buy her a new car and take her on a month-long island getaway. Also, she insisted that she never wanted to see Kath or her mom ever again, so Dad arranged for them to move to another city. This worked for me, as I never wanted to see Kath again either. I know I have a short temper, and I overreact sometimes, but I honestly believed that Kath was my friend. It hurt knowing that she didn't care about me at all. She just wanted my life. As for Andrew and me, now we're back together, and there's no way I'm letting my short temper cause me to lose him again. All of this could have been avoided if I hadn't let my anger blindside me. I should have trusted him from the start and heard him out. So now, if I feel anger overtaking my thoughts, I will go and pace the yard first to calm down. I may look like a crazy person, but it works a treat.
Hi guys, it's Sam, your favorite single guy. After my girlfriend of 9 years, Jeanette, cheated on me, I decided to give up on girls and try dating a guy instead. It took a few dates with this guy called Grant for me to realize that I'm not gay. Feeling confused, I wandered over to the lake. That's when I saw the bubble tea girl sobbing her heart out. We ended up chatting, and turns out she's pretty amazing. But being the dumb guy I am, I forgot to ask her for her name and number. I'd already run into her twice, so surely it wouldn't be long until our paths crossed again, right? But weeks went by, and there was no sign of her. I even spent a few afternoons in the bubble tea cafe in an attempt to find her again. I didn't spot her, but I did find her look-alike. The poor girl looked terrified when I charged up to her shouting, "Yes, I found you!" Oops. I just couldn't stop thinking about her. Ugh, this was so annoying. Then, to make my day even worse, my mother called and asked me to come over for an emergency meeting. There's no point arguing with my mother, as she's a formidable force, so I went straight round there. As soon as I walked through the door, she waved her phone in front of me. There was the picture of me holding that Grant guy's hand. It seems James had stayed true to his threat. That jerk. He was definitely off my Christmas card list. Mom sternly asked me, "Who is that young man, and are you having an affair with him? What about Jeanette, that poor girl?" Oh yeah, I may have forgotten to tell them that I wasn't with Jeanette anymore. I told my parents to get a stiff drink and sit down. Then I filled them in on Jeanette cheating on me, the breakup, and how in my confused and lonely state I thought I might be gay. But I realized I wasn't. My parents didn't look convinced by my story. They have nothing against the LGBT community, but they own a pharmaceutical company, which I will take over in a few years. And it's important to them that the family has a successor. Ugh, could they just stop overthinking for a sec? Then my mom glared at me as she said, "Sam, your father and I are insistent that you end it with this man at once, and then you shall attend the dates we set up. I happen to know a family with a lovely daughter who's around your age. I'll invite her round for dinner tomorrow night. Make sure you dress smartly." I had no choice but to agree to this, so I wore this stylish chic Italian suit, and my, oh my, it should be a crime to look as handsome as me. Even I found myself irresistible. The family arrived, and I braced myself for my first glance of this girl. What? I knew her. To my shock, it was the bubble tea girl. Her parents introduced her. Her name was Julia. Julia? What a beautiful name. I just couldn't hide my joy. I was smiling the whole time. I couldn't stop myself, even though it might have looked kinda creepy. The stars had aligned. The girl of my dreams was sitting opposite me, and wow, I couldn't take my eyes off her. The way she ate, drank, and sneezed, everything was so cute. Oh gosh, I was really falling for this girl. After dinner, my mother suggested I take Julia on a guided tour of the garden, as the roses this season were really beautiful. As soon as we were outside, Julia turned to me and said, "Okay, listen, you're the 10th guy my parents have set me up over the past 2 weeks. I'm exhausted. I have no intention of settling down anyway. So why don't we save each other's time and end it now?" Oh, wow, I didn't see that coming. She didn't like me? I mean, hello? Prince Charming was in a suit, for God's sake. This girl seriously needed her eyes checked. She said, "I'm out of here," and was about to go inside when I had a light bulb moment. Wait, I have an idea. What if we get engaged? She turned around and gave me a shocked look. Well, I'd started this, so I might as well carry on. Your parents are bugging you and mine are bugging me. So let's pretend to get engaged, then we wouldn't have them interfering with our love lives anymore. It would be a win-win for both of us. Julia looked confused and wasn't convinced at all, so I added, you would still be allowed to date other people, no strings attached. It's just that we would probably have to live together to avoid any suspicion. But that's not a big deal. My apartment has plenty of space. So what do you say? I could tell that Julia was thinking it over, but she looked like she needed a booster, which is why I blurted out, oh, and also FYI, I'm gay. So you don't have to worry about me as you're not my type. It'd be like living with a roommate, albeit an extremely handsome one. Oh, great. How could I win her over when she thought I was gay? Great job, Sam! But then to my surprise, she agreed to it. Oh my God, I didn't think it would work. I was so happy but needed to calm down and play it cool. So we shook hands to seal the deal. The next day, we met up in a cafe to discuss the terms, and we came up with a set of very important rules. 1. Don't tell another living soul about the contract. 2. No excuses. Important events must be attended together. 3. We can date other people, but they must be kept secret from all friends and family. 4. No one else is allowed to stay over, due to limited space and awkward alert. 5. Wednesday night is taco and movie night. This is non-negotiable. We both signed the contract. Wow, I couldn't believe this was actually happening. I was about to embark on a fake relationship with my dream girl. I mean, what could possibly go wrong? We fake dated for a month, then we invited our families to a posh restaurant and announced that we were engaged. Then she showed them the bargain ring we'd gone halves on and everything. My mom was so delighted she wouldn't stop hugging everyone. After that, we moved in together, and my plan to win over my fiancé's heart was officially in motion. On our first night at my place, which was now our new home, I took out an extra pillow for Julia and changed the blanket to a bigger one, so we could share it. Julia saw me making the bed, so she asked, "Oh, what are you doing? You don't seriously think we're sleeping in the same bed together, right?" I said, "Of course we were. Where else should we sleep?" She laughed and said she was taking the bed and that I could sleep on the couch. Oh, hell no. This was a great chance to get close to her. So I said I had back problems and needed to sleep on the bed. I reminded her again I was gay, so no worries, but she still refused, so she slept on the couch. Ugh, she was so stubborn. How was I meant to sleep knowing that my fiancé was on the couch? So I went to check on her and see if she was still awake. Nope. She was fast asleep. Even with her mouth open, she looked super cute. I laid on the ground next to her, and before I knew it, I'd fallen asleep. I had this amazing dream where Julia and I were chasing each other at the beach, and she was teasing me by splashing water on my face. Suddenly, I woke up as I felt something wet on my face. I opened my eyes, and it was Julia. She was drooling on me. Ugh. I hurried back to the bedroom before she woke up and saw me covered in her slobber, as that would have been awkward. The next morning, I made Julia my specialty breakfast of scrambled eggs, bacon, and sausages. I put real effort into my presentation, so my dishes always look like they came from a Michelin star restaurant. Gordon Ramsay had nothing on my culinary abilities. After breakfast, she went out, so I decided to make a few adjustments. I arranged for the couch to be taken away. Then, later on, I decided to cook her a slap-up dinner. She walked through the door and looked confused when she saw the table was set with a vase of flowers and candles. "What's the occasion?" she asked me. "No reason. I always cook like this," I shrugged. "And where's the couch?" She frowned at me. "Oh, that old thing? It broke. Springs everywhere. It was a danger, really, so I had it taken away. Just stay in my bed until we get a new one." I knew she couldn't refuse now, as there was nowhere else to sleep. But no, she didn't agree. Ugh, she must be doubting I was gay. I knew it. Okay, I still had a backup plan. It was time to bring out the boys. I took a stack of magazines out of my closet and said, "Okay, at least let me find a blanket for you to sleep on." She looked at the magazines with wide eyes. Yes, they were all People's Magazine's Sexiest Man Alive covers. Chris Hemsworth, Bradley Cooper, and other irresistible chaps. She was about to pick one up, but I gave her a serious look and said, "Please be careful. They're my prize collection." She was silent for a moment and then said it was okay to sleep in the same bed. Oh my God, success! I knew it was a great idea to borrow those magazines from my friend. Julia took out some extra pillows, put them in the middle of the bed, and said, "Don't you dare cross the line." I smiled and nodded. The next morning I woke up and was shocked as hell. Julia was hugging me while sleeping. All the pillows she put in the middle were lying on the ground. Looks like she couldn't resist me. I mean, who could blame her? I am a hunk. I just lay there still and enjoying this beautiful moment. But then she suddenly woke up and pushed me out of the bed. Ouch! It was worth the pain though, right? And it didn't stop there. Living with Julia while having to pretend to be gay was a bumpy road that I've decided to take, I must say. But will this bear me some sweet fruit in the end? Stay tuned to find out.
Have you ever wondered what being a parent would be like? How about if you suddenly became a parent and your parent became a teenager? Well, it happened to me, and I'm here to tell you all about it. Hello, everybody. My name's Heaven, and I'm 17. But don't let my name deceive you, because this Heaven came straight out of hell. I suppose I've never been the easiest child. Back when I was younger, I had a lot of temper tantrums and outbursts. Once, when I was 8, this boy took the green crayon I wanted, so I snatched it off him, then snapped it in half. He burst into tears, and the teacher got involved and tried to put me in the timeout corner, so I screamed at her and even gave her some bruises. The teacher rang my parents and told them this was the last strike, and I'd been expelled. When they picked me up, my dad just sighed and stayed quiet, but my mom yelled at me. "Well, I hope you're happy now, Heaven. You've brought shame to our family, and now we've got to find another school willing to take you." Now, 9 years later, and the relationship between Mom and me is worse than ever. We just don't see eye to eye on anything. To be honest, we're like strangers. She has absolutely no idea what it feels like to be a teenager, and her super strict rules are ridiculous, such as no boyfriends until I'm 18. No parties, no drinking, no staying out past 8:30 p.m., no unhealthy foods. No, 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 no. She was such a fun killer. Jeez, who was she to try and control me like this? Ugh. Me being me, I tried to find my way around these stupid rules. I made out I was having a girly sleepover at my friend Clara's house, then ended up going to a party. I said I was at an after-school club, when really, I went on a date with a boy. And I chucked the healthy packed lunches she made me in the trash and ordered a greasy burger and loaded cheese fries instead. I hated the fact that Mom was ruining my life with all of her dumb rules, and she hated the fact that I didn't respect her enough to follow her dumb rules. Because of this, we argued. A lot. And my little bro John and my dad often found themselves stuck in the middle. I guess that they couldn't stand the icy atmosphere between us. So eventually, they themselves prepared for a family day out. And it was certainly going to fix nothing. Her rules still followed us to the park, and she'd even stopped me talking to this really cute guy and shouted at me to go mind John. Ugh! I wasn't here to be a maid! Then, when we got home, she insisted I help her cook dinner. So I poured Dad a beer, and when I thought Mom wasn't looking, I slurped back the rest of the can. Suddenly, my mom screamed out, "What do you think you're doing? You're too young to be drinking!" I just rolled my eyes and said, "What? It was a tiny sip. Stop being so uptight, else you'll turn into a wrinkly old prune." Then I threw the can on the floor and walked off. She gave me a fierce glare, but I didn't care. How could she be just so serious? So when we were all sitting around the table for dinner, I could feel the tension between me and Mom. She passed John a plate full of chicken nuggets, but she passed me a plate heaped full of broccoli. Yuck! Where are my nuggets? I asked. Mom replied, "John is a growing boy. You, however, need to eat some vegetables, as you're getting a little chubby." How dare she? I wasn't even fat. In fact, I'm so skinny, I could be a model. If anyone needed to watch their weight, it was her, not me. She was the one squeezing herself into her old pair of skinny jeans. So I grabbed my plate of broccoli and threw it in the trash. Mom got up and said, "Fine, go hungry. See if I care. And you can clean up after yourself from now on." I yelled back, "Ridiculous! There's nothing in my stomach and you're giving me chores? Is this child abuse?" But then my dad startled us by slamming his fist on the table. "That's enough! Both of you! Start acting like grown-ups!" We both muttered out sorry. Then Dad came up with his bonkers idea.
Okay, so if you two cannot live in harmony, why don't you trade places?
Mom and I were kind of confused. What do you mean? I said to him.
Well, it's simple. Heaven, you'll switch places with Mom and do the housework, shopping, making dinner, and taking care of John, and so on. While Ariana,
he looked at Mom.
You'll relive your teenage years and go to school. Let's say for 2 days.
Mom looked thrilled at the prospect of being me. As for me, I wasn't convinced. I mean, who likes doing chores? Besides, tomorrow at school was class picnic day, which meant no classes, lots of tasty food, and plenty of time to stare at cute boys. But Mom seemed so excited at the idea of being me, so I decided I could take advantage of this. Does this mean I don't have to follow any stupid rules? I asked, and Mom and Dad nodded in agreement. Okay then, all the strict rules are gone.
Does this mean I can eat chocolate in bed?
John asked. I grinned. You betcha! Mom just shrugged and said,
It's okay, Mom. Now I have to prepare stuff for my picnic.
And she excitedly ran upstairs. This would be a breeze, right? I mean, how hard could being Mom actually be? The next morning, John woke me up extra early and insisted I make him breakfast. Yawn. While I was pouring cereal into a bowl for him, Mom appeared. She was wearing her hat backwards. Geez, someone seriously needed to tell her it wasn't the 90s anymore. Have fun, Ariana. I winked at her.
You too, Mom.
She winked back. I watched her through the window. As she got on the school bus, she turned to me and did the peace out sign. Geez, could she be any more uncool? Whatever, she could be as cringy as she wanted. I didn't care, as I had the whole day at home alone. Or at least, until I had to pick up my bro from school. I didn't bother loading up the dishwasher, and I sidestepped past the massive pile of laundry and decided to spend the morning on the couch watching a chick flick and painting my nails. This was the life. A few hours passed, and I was so bored and hungry, so I went into the kitchen to look for food. But the cupboards were empty. Then I noticed a shopping list and some money on the counter. Reluctantly, I walked to the local store, but I ignored the list and bought lots of snacks. Hey, I was Mom, so I made the rules. In the end, I found myself so bored that I actually ended up doing the laundry. I didn't really know what I was doing, so I threw everything into the machine, fiddled with the dial, and hoped for the best. Then my phone rang. It was Clara. So I answered and she said, Hey, why is your mom here instead of you? I told her about the switch up, then asked her what my mom was up to. She was quiet for a second, then said, well, she's definitely enjoying the picnic. In fact, she's showing Mrs. Puller her dabbing skills. What? My mom was dabbing? Which no one did anymore. And in front of our ancient science teacher? Was she trying to humiliate me? Whatever, my mom could get on with it. I had house chores to do. Geez, what's with chores? They seriously never seem to end. By the end of the day, I was so exhausted that I ordered takeout for everyone, then slumped in front of the TV. I finally had the option to stay out late, but I didn't have the energy to do it. Then, the next day, when I was doing yet more house chores, my friend Patrick sent me a photo. It was Mom. She was wearing a cheerleader's outfit that exposed her midriff. What? She was just at a casual football match. No one dressed up for that. Then Patrick sent me another picture. In it, Mom was fiddling with her hair and touching some jock's shoulder. OMG. Was she trying to flirt with him? Whatever. I didn't have time for this. I had to go pick John up from school, then go to the grocery store to get supplies for dinner. We arrived home to find Mom slumped on the couch, surrounded by empty wrappers and cans. On seeing me, she said, "Oh, you're back." I told John to go to his room, then I stormed over to Mom and said, "What's with all this mess? Clean it up." She just smirked at me and said, "Nah, you never clean it up, so why should I? After all, we have switched places, remember?" She finished her beer, then burped loudly before she threw the can at my feet, then walked off. This was so annoying. I'd already tidied the living room once today, and now I had to do it again. My mom was so unfair. Then, when I finally managed to grab 5 minutes to relax with a hot chocolate, loud thudding sounds were coming from upstairs. It was her music. It was so loud, it made the ceiling shake. Geez, she was so annoying. Then suddenly, it dawned on me. This was how I acted. Mom was just being me. So, okay, I guess I was a little harsh at times. I suppose being mom wasn't as easy as it looks. So I decided to make amends by making a delicious dinner. But there was one problem. I can't cook. In fact, the last time I tried to cook, I set the crepes and the pan on fire. So, for safety purposes, I asked Clara and Patrick to help me. They had cooking class, so they knew what to do. We created a feast of barbecue ribs, burgers, cornbread, salad, grape punch, and for dessert, a chocolate lava cake and blueberry pie. I swear they looked so good, I wanted to drool all over them. Mom came downstairs chewing her gum and scrolling through her phone, but then she looked at the food and stuttered, How did you make all of this? Not even I could make this many meals. I just shrugged and said, I had a little help from my friends. No biggie. Then I stopped in front of Mom and said, I'm sorry that I've been a bad daughter. I know you do a lot for me, and I promise I'll be better from now on. Mom started crying and said, I'm sorry too. I know it isn't easy being your age. I can't keep up with the trends. I thought dabbing was popular. Anyway, from now on, I'll be fair to you, and we'll have fun together. After that, we hugged it out. Then my dad stood up and said, Well, now anyone want to trade places with me? John immediately raised his hand, and all could see his eyes light up. Soon, we all burst out laughing, thinking about one day John will go to work and talk about dinosaurs at the meetings. Meanwhile, my dad is building a Lego castle for John's kindergarten girlfriend. My family is now happier than ever. It's all thanks to my dad's crazy idea. You should never disrespect your parents. Otherwise, you might just find yourself living in their shoes. Literally. And trust me, I'll take strict rules and being nagging parents any day if the alternative is grocery shopping and house chores. Ugh!
Do you believe in fate? Well, I never did. I'm a 21-year-old college student studying finance and banking. So, yeah, numbers are my forte. Therefore, I'm a logical thinker. Horoscopes and chance meetings? As if. But then I met someone who changed it all. I'm Kai, by the way, and let me tell you my story. It all started one evening while studying. I got a serious craving for some Cheetos, so I went out to get some. That's when I saw a petite girl shouting at two huge guys in the park. Hey, Bigfoot, did you really just litter? Pick it up now or I'll give you a good going over. Oh man, did this girl have a death wish? And was she drunk? The two guys didn't look happy. They approached her and one of them even raised his hand up like he was gonna hit her. But she quickly pushed his hand away, which only made him madder. Man, I didn't want to get involved in this. So I pretended I hadn't seen them and walked off. But then I was just a few steps away, I heard one of the guys scream. And the other guy said, "What the? Gross!" I could have just carried on walking, but nope, my curiosity got the better of me. So I turned around and saw that one guy was covered in vomit. Then the girl pointed at me and said, "Honey, there you are." Then she fainted. Huh? I didn't know her. I was staring at them, looking perplexed, when one of the dudes yelled, "Why are you still standing there? Quickly take your crazy girlfriend home if you don't want to taste my fist." I was so scared I hurried over and carried this girl off. I had no idea who she was or where she lived. This was crazy. I placed her down on a nearby bench and looked around for those guys, but luckily they'd gone. I didn't know what to do, so I left her there and walked off. But then I started to feel bad. Was I too heartless? What if something else happened to her? So I went back and gave the girl a piggyback ride back to my house. Jeez, she was so much heavier than she looked. As soon as I dropped her onto the couch, her phone rang, so I answered it. Hello? Then the person on the other end of the line asked, Who are you? Where's my friend? I muttered out my address and was about to tell her to come pick up her friend, but she already hung up. Why was she so rude? I'd almost bust my back carrying her friend to safety. How annoying. This night has been far too dramatic for me, and worse still, I didn't have any Cheetos. I decided to take a shower, then get some sleep. But as soon as I stepped out of the bathroom, the doorbell rang. I presumed it must be the girl's friend, so I answered the door. Then 2 cops immediately pushed me against the wall and handcuffed me. Before I could fathom what was happening, one of them said kidnap and assault accusations had been made against me, and I was escorted to the station. What? I tried to explain what happened, but they wouldn't listen to me. That night, as I sat in the cold, uninviting cell, I found myself regretting my kindness. I didn't sleep a wink. I just hoped the next morning came quickly so that I could confront that girl about this false accusation. But before I could do that, the cops released me at dawn. The girl had sobered up and told them it was all just a misunderstanding. Well, luckily, she still remembered a bit, or else I didn't dare to imagine it anymore. I swore I would never get involved with anyone in need ever again. No good deed goes unpunished, for real. A few days later, when I was watching TV, someone knocked on my door, and you wouldn't believe it. It's the drunk girl. I looked at her suspiciously. What are you doing here? The girl didn't say anything. Instead, she coldly slipped past me and entered my house. Huh? What was she playing at? Then she glared at me and asked me about that night. After I told her everything that happened, she laughed. Okay, I believe you. If I didn't, you'd know about it. She held her fist in front of me. I startled and almost fell off my chair. Then she chuckled. Now I'm hungry. Go make your guests some food. What was with this girl? She was so direct and bold. I glanced at her and said no, but she continued. If you don't, I'll go to the cops and change my statement. Then she got up to leave, so I quickly said, Okay, fine. Then reluctantly searched my cupboards for food. Trusted spaghetti, how you never fail me. So I prepared bolognese for us. While she was eating, she said, I'm Nora, by the way, the best screenplay writer major in the country. She winked. She thanked me for the food, then left. Phew, that'd be it now, surely. Nope, turns out this was just the beginning. The next morning, she texted me, come pick me up for college ASAP, else I'm calling the cops. Was she being serious? Then she sent me another message with her address and told me to hurry up. I rushed over there and she got into my car, glared at me, and said, You're late. And that's how I somehow became this Nora girl's servant. Her calls and messages could come at any time. And she would always force me to do things for her straight away. One time I was soaking in the bath when she texted and demanded I bring her some chocolate. Another time she called me at 2 a.m. and told me she was bored, so I had to come over and play some video games with her. I also became her unpaid Uber driver. Every day, from home to school and back. And it's inevitable that I overslept once, so Nora bombarded my phone with tons of texts and calls. I groggily answered, and she used her calling the cops threat again to force me to get there in 15 minutes. What a pain in the neck. Another time, I just stepped out of the house to go and hang out with my friends when Nora showed up and insisted that I had to take her to the cinema. She wouldn't take no for an answer, so I had to cancel on my friends and go watch some bland movie with her. Such a troublesome girl, right? But strangely, as time went by, I started to find Nora less annoying, and instead found myself smiling when she texted me or called. On the days when she didn't bother me, well, my mood seemed to dampen. Was I crazy? I mean, she was cute, very spontaneous, and, well, there was no one else quite like her. But then all of a sudden the messages and calls stopped. Did she not want me around anymore? I miss Nora. Many times I had to stop myself from calling her. I should be happy I was out of Nora's control, right? Then one day out of the blue, my phone beeped. It was Nora. Come to the Starbucks on Vincent Street. Move it. You have 5 minutes. Geez, that bossy tone again. Still, I immediately drove to the address. When I got there, I saw Nora with a guy and a girl. I walked over to them and just sat down. Nora held my arm. Honey, why are you so late? I stared at her in surprise. She smiled and turned to the other two. This is Kai, my boyfriend. What? Did I get it wrong? Did she just say I was her boyfriend? Then she said, Kai, this is my former bestie Kim and her boyfriend Greg, who's also my ex. Awkward, right? But I have you now, so we can all be friends. Reading the situation, I realized I had to go along with it. So I stroked her hair and said, Yes, my honey muffin, anything you want. My cheesy lines seemed to work, as they both looked annoyed, then left. So I turned to look at Nora and stammered. Did you just say I'm your boyfriend? Nora said nonchalantly, Yeah, isn't that okay? If you don't like it, forget it. Then she was about to leave. I pulled her hand and said, Yes, of course. Sounds great. So that's how we became an official couple. We went on a few dates and she was her usual demanding self. Not that I'd want her any other way. Then one time, after a month of dating, Nora dragged me to a Swan Lake in a nearby park. She looked at me for a long time and then said, Kai, I'm studying abroad for a year. I leave tomorrow. I glared at her in surprise and asked why she hadn't told me sooner. She continued, I guess I didn't want to make you sad, and I don't know if your feelings are big enough, so write down your feelings for me and give them to me tomorrow. That night, I carefully wrote down all my thoughts and feelings for her. I still had hope that this 1 year of long-distance love would be over quickly. The next day, I drove her to the airport and handed her my letter. To my surprise, Nora also gave me a letter and told me over and over that I could only read it when I got home. Of course, I obeyed her. Then read it as soon as I passed my door, and whoa, I wasn't expecting this. In it, Nora confessed all this time she was just using me to get revenge on her ex, and took advantage of me to get over him. That night we had first met, she found out about him and Kim, but now she regretted how she treated me. At the end of the letter, she wrote, If fate wants us to be together, then we'll meet again one day. What? I was so shocked, so I called to tell her she didn't need to feel guilty and that I forgave her. I kept calling, but it didn't work. I also asked her friends, but no one knew how to reach her. She disappeared from all social media, and just like that, she vanished from my life. I missed Nora so much and found myself hoping that fate would reunite me with her someday. Then one time while I was surfing YouTube, this web drama called My Destiny Is Yours caught my eyes. Curious, I decided to check it out. And I watched wide-eyed as my story with Nora played out in front of me through each episode. This definitely was written by Nora. But how would she end it? It stopped at the part where the girl left and cut off all contact with the guy. An announcement popped up on the screen. The finale was launching at 9 p.m. tonight. I anxiously watched the seconds tick by. During the last episode, the two characters met up at a Swan Lake. I had a hunch, so without a second delay, I immediately ran to the Swan Lake in the nearby park. My heart flipped when I saw a girl standing there. It was Nora. Man, I ran so fast and hugged her. She hugged me back, then said, I was a little nervous you wouldn't see the movie. Then she smirked. But it doesn't matter anyway. I could have just texted you, come to the Swan Lake now, and you would have come, right? Then we both burst out laughing and continued to hug each other. Well, you see, fate brought me and Nora together, and this logic-loving skeptic is now a big believer in destiny. How about you? Have you found your destiny yet?
Hey, I'm Callie. I'm almost 16, but I could live in peace only in the first 2 years of my child's life, until my little brother, Ethan, came along and ruined everything. I always hoped that little brat had never been born. And if you're the oldest sibling like I am, then chances are you'll feel the same way as I do. Firstly, his birth meant that my parents barely noticed me anymore. Yeah, I know I was 2 back then, so I don't actually remember this, but as the years passed by, I saw how it was. I got into trouble for dumb things because I was the oldest, while Ethan got away with everything because he was too young to understand. Ugh, I really hate my brother. And I could tell tons of reasons for that. We always fought over the last slice of pizza. When he got it, he'd eat it open-mouthed in front of me. And Mom would smile and say, my growing boy. But when I got it, Mom would frown at me and say, Callie, don't be greedy. Ugh! He'd sneak into my room and took the plushy bunny my bestie gave me and superglued its ears together. So I took his Switch and hid it in the basement. It took him an entire week to find it. Ha! In revenge, he smeared chocolate over the back of my pants. I only realized what was going on when other kids started laughing and pointing at me. I had to wear my sweater tied around my waist for the rest of the day, even though it was freezing. So I retaliated by rubbing stinging nettles on his pillow. The next morning, his face was bright red, and he couldn't stop itching. It was so funny. It was also a photo shoot day. So much to his protests, a makeup artist spent ages applying makeup on him to cover up the redness. He looked so ridiculous. You see, my dad's a politician, so sometimes we have to appear in photo shoots where we look like a loving, harmonious family. Pfft, as if. I could play pretend for the cameras, but in reality, I really just wanted to kick my brother's butt. We just didn't get on at all. He's such a brat. So I guess pranking each other was our coping strategy. I mean, hey, it isn't easy living with someone you hate. Our pranks happen so often that our parents just let us get on with it. However, there is one thing Ethan is terrified of. It all started back when he was 8, and Dad was watching The Walking Dead. Me and Ethan walked into the room just as there was a zoom-in scene in which a zombie was having a feeding frenzy. Being the brave girl, I thought it was interesting and sat down and watched it with Dad. But my bro, being the wuss, he screamed, then ran out of the room, hid under our parents' bed, burst into tears, and refused to move for 2 hours because he was convinced that at the sight of that zombie, he knew he must be chosen, and zombies were going out to get him. Gotta Achilles heel. So, not long after that, when he dropped my brand new headphones down the toilet, which made me have to put my hand in to pick it up, I decided to get revenge on him. And luckily for me, Halloween was just around the corner. Perfect. I binge-watched makeup tutorials on YouTube and practiced on my friends. Then on Halloween, I turned myself into a seriously scary zombie, hid the video camera in his room, got into his closet, and made grumbling and moaning sounds. When he opened the closet door, I jumped out at him and tackled him to the floor. OMG, he screamed so loudly, and he actually peed his pants. And now, all these years later, I still have it on video to torment him with. Ha! But don't be fooled, as my brother was not your average kitty. It wasn't that long ago that he played a prank on me, which made me madder than Misty from Pokemon. So, I had a crush on this boy from school. He was just so sweet and dreamy, and from the cute glances he kept on giving me, I was 100% sure he liked me too. Valentine's Day seemed like the perfect day to express my feelings toward him. So I stayed up until midnight the night before, making chocolate for him. I left my chocolates lovingly wrapped and boxed on the side in the kitchen and went to bed. The next day, I grabbed the box, and at lunchtime, I handed it to my crush. To my utter dismay when he opened it, instead of the lovely heart-shaped chocolates I'd spent hours making, there were embarrassing childhood pics of me, including a photo from when I was 12 with a bunch of hideous pimples on my face. One of me as a toddler sleeping with my mouth open and saliva drool on my chin, and one of me as a baby with a bowl of food mush on my head. Then my crush lifted up a note saying, "Great chocolates, sis." That sneaky brat. Although my crush kept saying that I looked really cute in those photos and he liked them even more than chocolates, I still wanted to give that brat a hard punch right in his annoying face. Oh God, I'm begging you, please take him away from me. I'll be good. I'll do my homework on time, and I'll stop borrowing Mom's expensive perfume. Okay, so this may have been my wish, but I never expected that it would come true. It was a normal evening around the dinner table. Ethan was glued to his phone, and Mom got really annoyed and made him clear up the table. While he was doing that, I saw a message pop up on his phone from someone called Sophie, saying, "Okay, I'll see you in the front of the cinema at 8 p.m. I'm looking forward to it," smiley face. What? Ethan had a date? Oh, my sweet little bro. It was payback time for ruining my crush's chocolates. So I stealthily followed Ethan to the cinema. Because the cinema was pretty close to our home, we both walked. He cut through the park. Geez, it was creepy at this time. I swear the trees looked like monsters. Anyway, I saw something light up by my feet. I picked it up. It was Ethan's phone. What an idiot. I was so gonna make him work hard to get this back. As I walked out of the park, I saw a black van parked nearby. Suddenly, I heard a scream and saw 2 giant men trying to drag Ethan toward the back of the van. Ethan was crying and struggling with fierce resistance, but my weak, skinny 14-year-old brother was no rival for those 2 men. What? How dare they try and kidnap my brother? He might have been the most annoying human on the planet, but he was my annoying little brother. There's no way I was letting this happen. I rushed forward and shouted, "Ethan, zombie mode on!" My presence startled the 2 kidnappers, and this made them more intent on dragging him toward the van. When all of a sudden, Ethan bit down hard into the hand of the man who was covering his mouth, just like how zombies always do. Good one, bro. The man wept out and shook his hand. The other man pulled on Ethan's arm, but he managed to scramble to his feet. As the man tried to push him into the van, Ethan sought his opportunity and kicked him right between his legs. Ouch. While this was going on, I called the cops and told them to be quick. Then I saw the jerk with the bitten hand about to grab Ethan again. So I screamed out loud, "Ethan, run!" He sprinted off into the park and the bitten man followed him. It was exactly a real-life zombie chase. Huh. Suddenly, I felt arms grab me around the waist. Oh no, it was the other guy. He said, "I guess you'll have to go too," before he lifted me up and carried me over to the back of the van. I screamed out and tried hitting and kicking out, but he was too strong. He threw me into the back of the van before he could get in. I smashed the van door and quickly locked the door from the inside to knock him out. Lucky for me, not him, but the guy chasing Ethan was the one who was keeping the key. It was so scary when the kidnapper kept shouting at me outside, but I was even more frightened thinking Ethan could get hurt somewhere out there. Then suddenly I heard his voice. "Hey, stop!" Did he get caught? I looked out to see the contrary. He was running towards me after 2 police officials. They were holding their guns to control the guy standing by the van. Ethan was safe and came back for me. I opened the door and jumped into his arms. Oh, let's skip this part. I get goosebumps every time I recall this weepy situation. Me and Ethan followed the cops and saw the other kidnapper handcuffed to a tree, fighting with mosquitoes with his one free arm in the dark. The police told me that during the way heading to the van, Ethan kept on complaining about how slow and unprofessional they were, as they should come to save me first instead. My boy still stubbornly said, "I could run myself, but this wimp couldn't." The idiot definitely couldn't have imagined that he has a Wonder Woman big sister like me. Our parents rushed into the police department to see us. And yep, weepy part again. Turned out my dad's rival had hired the guy to kidnap Ethan so that they could use him to blackmail my dad. I don't clearly understand the whole situation. Maybe after this I'll watch more political movies, but now, thanks God, we're safe. I may have wished my brother would disappear, but when I actually could have lost him forever, well, I have to admit that it really freaked me out. And it turns out he felt the same way about me too. Crazy, huh? Of course, we still play pranks on each other. We wouldn't be us if we didn't. But I realized something. He might be the most annoying brat ever, but he's still my family. And I love my family so much. However, I'm pretty sure there'll still be times when I hate my annoying little bro. Like right now. While I'm sitting in my room telling you my story, I'm sure I can hear him giggling outside of my door. What's the betting I open it and end up with a bucket of cold water on my head or something? All this may because I have told my mom he has a girlfriend. Tough luck, little bro. There's no way you're getting the better of this pranking queen.
Family. They're complicated. Right. I used to think my family was happy as can be. Nope. Just like when a water balloon gets too big and then explodes, Mom and Dad split up just after one big, fat, dumb fight. After that, my dad moved out. Me and my little sis Katie were given a hard choice. One of us would stay here with Mom, and the other would go live with Dad and his new girlfriend, Zara. Katie's really sweet, kind, and sensitive, so I didn't think uprooting her life and making her live with some new stepmommy would be a good idea. I'm a big bro. Protecting my little sis is what I do best. So when it was settled, Katie stayed with Mom, and I moved in with Dad and Zara. Fast forward a few months, and Mom fell in love with some dude named Glenn and married him. I wasn't sure about Glenn. I'd only met him a couple of times, but he seemed too smug for my liking. Anyway, back to Dad's, it turns out my life with them was a breeze. They let me go out when I wanted, barely made me do any house chores. Instead, Zara was not a mean person. She treated me like family. And for my 16th birthday, she even suggested my dad to surprise me with my very own car. Happy days. But there was one snag. From my sis's messages, I sensed things weren't quite so rosy with her. So I went around to show her my new car. Well, really this was just an excuse to go and check things out. I strolled into the house to find Katie emptying the dishwasher. She was crying. I mean, I know house chores suck, but they weren't bad enough to bring someone to tears. Something was up. I made her a drink, and we both sat down and talked. She told me that it was Glenn. He didn't like her and kept getting her into trouble. Katie said, "He always considered me as a thorn in his eyes because he wanted Mom to spend full time with him. He demanded that I do all the house chores, and then when Mom got home from work, he'd say he did them. If I tried to question him on this, he'd get me into trouble by telling lies to Mom about me. Such as one time he said I cursed at him and stole $20 from his wallet. I didn't like the sound of this, so I asked her, "Have you tried telling Mom what's going on?" She nodded her head and blubbed out, "Yes, she says I'm just lazy and jealous." I replied, "Sounds like Mom's blinded by love. Don't worry, sis, she'll come around and see sense soon." She sniffed back tears and said, "I hope so, Rory, as things really suck here." I told her to let me know the next time Glenn did anything sneaky. Whoa, turns out this guy likes to play dirty. A few days later, he switched the cooking oil for whiskey, so when Mom started the cooking, the whole thing went up in flames. Then Glenn rushed to the rescue and blamed Katie, saying he'd seen her holding the whiskey bottle last night, but presumed she was just trying to sneak some. Then he told Mom that Katie had insisted he cook her steak, so the prank must have been meant for him. Mom instantly believed him over Katie, and punished her by making her miss her school dance and having to do house chores instead. Poor Katie, she was so upset. But then a week later, sneaky Glenn struck again. This time Katie saw him switching Mom's diet mayo for the full-fat stuff. Katie rushed to get Mom to catch him red-handed, but when she arrived, she saw him spreading diet mayo in her bagel. Mom shouted at Katie for saying untrue things about her stepdad and grounded her again. This sucked. My sis was the sweetest girl, and she doesn't deserve this. Not to mention the fact that some of these pranks sound dangerous. Well, not so much the mayo one, but the fire one could have ended so badly. This Glenn dude needed to stop with the games, and it was about time I showed him that no one messes with my little sis. So I suggested we switch things up for a couple weeks. Katie would go and live with Dad and get to know Zara, and I'd go and live with Mom and get to know Glenn. It's clear Glenn knew he couldn't mess with me, so for the first week he stayed out of my way. I used this time to refuel, relax, enjoy Mom's cooking, and plot my revenge. When the second week arrived, I was ready to make Glenn's life a misery. Tough lucky, Glenny boy. Mom was working extra hard as Glenn had lost his job. So, being the good son I am, I drove her to the grocery store. Mom was so happy with my help, and she promised to make my favorite omelet. When we got home, Mom called Glenn to come and help carry the bags inside. He tried to impress her by carrying them all at once, but one of them split open and groceries went everywhere, including the box of eggs. Oops! Mom was furious and shouted at him. "That's what you get for trying to show off and be a strong man. Now I can't have an omelet for my dinner, and I was looking forward to that." Haha, seeing his dumbfounded expression was so funny. Yep, I cut a hole into the bottom of the bag so that would happen. I wasn't finished with him yet, no chance. So in the next few days, when Mom left super early for work, I poured cornflakes everywhere, threw dirty laundry onto the floor, put the dog bowl on top of the couch, and stomped around in my dirty sneakers. I even took the breakfast Mom had prepared for Glenn to school with me, so I knew he'd wake up hungry, then spent all day having to tidy up my mess. Ha! Naturally, Glenn wasn't happy with me, so when I got back from school, he forced me to mow the lawn. This guy looked so tired spending the entire day clearing out my stuff, so fine by me. As when Mom came home and saw me, I gasped for breath and said, "I had a busy day with schoolwork, but Glenn still made me do all the chores. I'm so tired, Mom." Mom rushed inside and found Glenn watching cartoons. Then she yelled at him, "You're home all day, so why don't you mow the lawn instead of making my son do it? I had to go to work. My boy had to do the chores. So what exactly is your role in this house?" Glenn was speechless. It didn't end there, as Mom was so mad she made him sleep on the couch. Glenn avoided me after this, but that wasn't enough. I had to make sure that he'd leave my sis alone. I needed to make Glenn realize that his jerky ways were wrong. I knew Mom and Glenn had a piggy bank in their room for their future kid fund. So when they weren't around, I snuck into their room, smashed open the piggy bank, and hid the money in Glenn's jacket. That night after dinner, I asked Mom if I could borrow her headphones. So she went into her room to grab them. Just then, Glenn grabbed his jacket and was about to go somewhere. The moment he stepped out the door, we heard a frantic scream upstairs. It was my mom. She must have found the broken piggy bank and ran downstairs yelling at Glenn. He stood in the doorway confused, but then she checked his pockets and voila! There was the money. She angrily waved it in front of his face. "What's this, huh? You're gonna go out spending the savings for our kid, right? You're making no money, so stop ruining everything." They took their argument outside, and I went up to my room and watched through the window. Suddenly a car pulled up and out stepped this well-dressed girl. Oh wow, it was Katie. She ran over to Mom and hugged her. Then Dad and Zara appeared. Turns out Katie had had a great time at Dad's. Zara had always wanted a daughter, so when Katie came, she was so happy and had taken her shopping, got her hair done, and spoiled her. When Mom looked at her own daughter having a better life with her stepmom, I was pretty sure she realized how bad she was. I could see her ashamed face. I rushed downstairs and greeted my sis. Then I turned to Mom and said, Mom, you should care for Katie more. You see, Glenn even treated me badly. You don't know how hard he was with her. We love you, so please trust Katie like you trust me. Then I turned to Glenn. You're her husband, but it doesn't mean you can replace us in our mom's heart. Mommies always love their children best. Don't be childish and try to separate them or I'll come back. I winked at him. Yeah, okay, he grunted. Then he turned to Katie and said, I'm sorry, Katie. What do you say to us starting again? Katie smiled sweetly and said, okay, I'd like that. It looks like I'd saved the day. Now Glenn knew that if he ever messed with Katie again, then I'd be back. After that, Mom still made Glenn do all the chores, but Katie, being the sweet girl that she is, helped him out with them. As for me, I went back to life at Dad's. I went around there more often to check on Katie and give Mom a lift to the grocery store. And Katie even came around for barbecues and to have a girly pamper session with Zara. So in the end, everything worked out, and now we're one big, crazy, dysfunctional family. But hey, as long as everyone's happy and doesn't try to mess with my little sis, then it's all good with me.
Rules, rules, rules. Moms sure do love dishing them out, don't they? I'm Nicole, by the way. And you see, my parents divorced when I was 8, so since then, it's just been me and Mom. Mom laid down a bunch of boring rules for me, but I hate following them. I'm 18, and I should be out having fun, right? To me, rules were made to be broken anyway, and trust me, I broke them. Only this led to my whole life changing. One day, I had an important math test, but I hate math. So I skipped school and went to the movies with my friends instead. I mean, hello? The last Avengers movie had just come out. No way was I missing it and getting spoilers. Maybe Mom would give me a detention for a few weeks, but it's no big deal, right? I arrived home to find Mom waiting for me. She glared at me and said, Nicole, I received an interesting phone call from the school. It turns out you haven't been there all day. So, where have you been? Oh no, busted! I just shrugged and replied, out. It's those friends of yours, isn't it? They are a bad influence. I walked off to my room. Nicole, come back here and talk. She shouted after me, but I ignored her. Then she yelled out, I can't stand you and your childish attitude anymore. You're going to live with your dad. What? She was kicking me out. Wow, I didn't expect her to do that. Whatever. I was sick of being moaned at all the time. Surely Dad would be far more understanding. I hadn't seen Dad all that much. In fact, the last time was, I think it was my 16th birthday. He was a busy man, as he's the principal at this snooty boys' school. And Mom wasn't kidding. She called him up, and that evening, he showed up and loaded my stuff into the trunk of his car. It felt super awkward. I had no idea what to say to him. Then, about an hour into the seriously tedious journey, he said, I completed all the admission procedures for you, so you can start learning in my school tomorrow. What? It was an all-boys school, and I was a girl. Besides, no way was I studying somewhere where my dad was the principal. Panicked, I asked, but Dad, isn't it an all-boys school? He said, It used to be, but of late, we've let a few female students in. I can't go there. You're the principal. It'll be so embarrassing. No way. I'll go to another school or something. He gave me a strict look and said, Mom told me all about your behavior in your old school, and it's unacceptable. So, you'll be learning at my school so I can keep an eye on you. This is not up for debate. OMG, I can't believe it. He was much stricter than Mom. So reluctantly, I muttered out, Fine, but only if you promise not to tell anyone I'm your daughter. He nodded and said, Okay, if that's what you want. the school was like something out of one of those weird movies. You know, where the characters think they're safe, but then start disappearing one by one. For starters, it was situated on a hill, miles from anything else. Inside, well, it was so masculine. Browns and grays, and I didn't see one picture in the entire building. The only female thing in the whole place was the girls' restroom. We had to share everything else with the boys. Talk about an inconvenience. The uniform was the same for boys and girls. An oversized shirt and baggy pants and these gross flat shoes. Yuck! During PE, girls were forced to do the same workout as the boys. Bench presses, push-ups, and playing soccer is not my idea of fun. Ugh! And there wasn't even a cheerleading squad. Then there were all these extra dumb rules for the girls, like only uniforms are allowed at school. No skirt, no dress, not even jeans. Do the top button of your shirt up. Tie your hair up into this ugly bun. No flirting with the boys. Yep, that was actually a rule. Can you believe this place? I didn't know whether this was a high school or a prison. I thought this was bad, but I soon realized this school had a major problem. Maybe it's because this school was originally boys only, but man, this place didn't appreciate girls at all. Once in a history class, the teacher asked us what year Abraham Lincoln became president. Easy. But before I could even raise my hand, she continued, "This question seemed too hard for girls. So do any of the boys know the answer?" What? How could she say that? What was with her male chauvinist attitude? This put me in a bad mood. So during dinner, I decided to moan to Dad about it. He needed to know how ridiculous his school was. So I told him how I hated his dumb rules and how sexist the teachers were. He glared at me and told me that there weren't enough girls at the school to warrant a separate uniform. Moreover, if girls dressed up, it would only cause distractions for the boys. As for the history teacher, it was just because boys often have larger knowledge than girls on this matter, so maybe she just didn't want to embarrass the girls in case they couldn't give out the right answer. Huh, what kind of argument was this? It wasn't the olden days. Jeez, these oldies needed to get with the decade. Okay, fine. I'll prove to the whole school and all the teachers that there weren't only boys here. The next day, I gathered all the girls from my class. In fact, there were only 2 of them, Angela and Carly, and we met up in the only girly place, the girls' restroom. Then I told them, "Hey girls, welcome to our club, The Doll. I think it's about time we fought for our rights and presence in this school. As girls matter too, right?" At first, they both seemed worried. I get it. They didn't want to get in trouble. But I soon managed to convince them that it'd be fine. Fun, even. So they came around and agreed. First up, it was time to do something about this awful uniform. We tied up our shirts to expose our waists, and I helped the others put subtle makeup on, so our skin looked like it had a natural glow to it. Then we all put glittery hair accessories and colorful scrunchies in our hair to jazz up our updos. Carly looked in the mirror and said, "Okay, maybe our uniform isn't so bad." And we all burst out laughing. Now, it was time to make an entrance. We all walked along the corridor together. All the boys and girls turned around to look at us with admiring eyes and open mouths. One boy even dropped his stack of books on the floor, and another one walked into his locker. Ha! The charm of girls was absolutely irresistible, right? Soon, we became a popular group around the school. The boys wanted to talk to us, and girls from other classes also joined our group, and I showed them how to style up their uniforms. It's great, right? Yep. There's a problem. The teachers were old fogies who didn't appreciate style. One day, before class, one teacher came up to me and my friends and accused us of ruining the dignity of the uniform and of exerting negative influences on other students. So I told her, "We aren't violating any of the school's previous rules. We wear the uniform, we keep our top button done up, and we have the regulation hairstyle. Dressing up is a girl's prerogative. Besides, if boys are distracted, it's their fault, not ours, so you can't blame us for that." After that, I seemed to become a thorn in the side of all the teachers. In every subject, I would always be asked to answer the most difficult questions. And, of course, I didn't know the right answer. I mean, nobody knew it. And then they would give me a gloating look. Ugh, how childish they were. Another time, I was in the lunch queue, and when it was my turn, I chose barbecue chicken drumsticks, as they're my favorite. However, to my surprise, the canteen server said there was no chicken left, then put this weird oatmeal slop on my plate. Ew! I could see there were loads of chicken left, so why was she being so unreasonable? I skipped the gross slop, so as soon as I got home from school, I was so hungry. So I made myself a huge bowl of noodles. Dad saw me devouring the food, then smiled and asked, "Has causing trouble at school all day made you that hungry?" In between my mouthfuls of food, I told him what had happened with the teacher, and in the canteen. He just smiled and said it was because I was too stubborn. What kind of an excuse was that? I mean, when was starving students a good idea? The next morning, I drowsily walked into class and sat down at my desk. That's when I realized I'd forgotten my phone. Well, this totally sucked, so I moaned to Angela. These teachers make my life a misery, and now I don't even have my phone. Today's going to be a long one. Suddenly, someone knocked on my desk. I looked up and saw my dad, aka the principal, standing there in front of me. I was so surprised that before I could say anything, he said, "Hey, Cupcake, you left your phone at home. Oh, and I brought you breakfast, as you know how grumpy you get when you're hungry." Then he put my phone and a sandwich on my desk, stroked my hair, then left. What was he doing? Did he forget his promise? Needless to say, my classmates looked shocked. Angela stared at me and said, "Huh? The principal is your dad? Unbelievable! Why didn't you tell us?" I sat there open-mouthed. This was the most awkward thing ever. "Thanks a lot, Dad." But little did I know, that was just the start of a new chapter of craziness. Things were about to get even worse. And oh boy, you wouldn't want to miss out on that.